three groups here, where the term RWX stands for read, write, execute. So we have three options set up here. If it's switched on, it'll show. If it's switched off, it'll be a dash. So if you look at the file new.txt, you can see it's read, write, but not executable. And then here it's read, and then here it's read. So these three groups, this first group here, this is the file or folder owner. The second group here is the group owner, and then we have all of the permissions. So if you're the file owner, which as root we are, these are the permissions we have. Right now we can read the file and write the file, but we can't execute. If I created a new account for, say, Bob, then Bob would come in here, and Bob only has read access. He can't write to this file or do anything because he's not the file owner unless we put him into a group or made him the file owner. So now what we can do with this is we can actually use something called chmod, which stands for change mode. Now there's a couple different ways we can do this. So there's a numbering system where you could say change mode 777. Now 777 on new.txt will give it read, write, execute for every single thing. I don't like really doing that unless we have to, but I do like using this instead. I like using +x. This means we can use execute on that file. So let's say new.txt with execute, and then you come into here and you say, okay, well, let's ls-la again, and it turns a shiny green. That means that it's executable. And that gave that permission not to just me, but it gave it to everybody. So what we do here is when we're using this execute, this comes into importance when we're trying to write our own scripts, or we're trying to use other people's scripts that we download, or we're trying to run an exploit. Later on in the course, you'll see really its importance, but we need to have the file executable, because if we make a script, and I'll actually show you in this lesson why it's important a little bit later, what you do is you have to have it executable in order to execute it, if that makes sense. It should. So if you tried to run, like, say, a bash script and it wasn't executable, it's going to say, hey, I don't know what you're talking about, can't run this right now. So very important when we want to run a script or Python or whatever we're doing, that we need it to be executable. Okay, moving on, we're going to talk a little bit about users and some important files here as well. We're never covering the remove RF. You're funny. That's the Alt F4 times 100. Anyway, so when we come into here, a few things I want to show you. So add user is the first thing I want to show you. So let's just say we want to add user. We'll call him Bob. Okay, we're making a guy named Bob. You can make Bob's password whatever you want. Okay, and then you come in here, you can enter information or not, hit enter. Awesome. So let's look at Bob now. So if we come into here and we say, all right, what are some important files that deal with users? And you're going to be asked this on an interview. You're going to find this, when it comes to just pen testing. You're going to find this when it comes to capture the flag. A lot of times you're going to need to know these files, right? So one of the most important files, and we're going to use a command called cat, is the etc password file. Now, the etc password file is called the password file, though it does not store passwords. It used to, way back in the day, store a password. Now it provides a placeholder of an X for a different file called the shadow file. But you can come into here and you can see information. You can see who the users are. You can see that there's root, and you can see what their UID is, etc. Well, if you scroll down, typically, you get to the bottom, you find the users that are actually on the machine as well, other than root. So when we talk about those users, we say, okay, well, we just created Bob. Bob's in this group 1000. That's pretty standard. And that's all that's here. If we kind of look through this, these are all just kind of system user accounts that we really don't have a lot of interest in. We're really concerned with root when we're pen testing, and we're really concerned with the users that we have. for the most part, especially when it comes to like capture the flag type stuff. So you can also say ls etc shadow here and look at the shadow file. And I said ls, I meant cat, I'm sorry, spaced. Okay. Yes, beef, the hook. The hooker of the pen testing world is beef. Okay, you come into here, you see this hash, right? And you have this hash information. This is the no-no that you should never give access to, right? This is the root should only access, and that's pretty much it. Because I've got the hash for Bob, I've got the hash for root here, and we could, in theory, crack these hashes, right? And it would probably be pretty easy. So if I come into here, and we can use a tool later on that I'll show you, it's called unshadowing. Basically, you take this hash or this shadow file and this password file, and you kind of combine them together. What it does is it takes the root, it places this hash in place of the X, and then it runs the rest out into here. You can run that through John, or you can run that through Hashcat or whatever, and you can attempt to crack it. Does it have the salt listed with it? If it has a salt, it doesn't mean it can't be cracked. It's very, I mean, these ones are very well known and crackable. If we ran these through, I bet for Bob, I put Robert123 for his password, so I'm pretty sure you could crack that fairly easy with Hashcat and a decent password list.
The 6 components that every bank's BSA AML compliance program must have are a system of internal controls, independent testing of the program's effectiveness, a designated individual to manage the program, training for appropriate personnel, an established customer identification program, and procedures for customer due diligence. For the next few minutes, we'll discuss each of these components. Let's start with the internal control system. A system of internal controls consists of policies, procedures, and processes that management uses to manage, monitor, and control money laundering and terrorist financing risks. Internal controls should be designed to assist in ongoing compliance with BSA AML regulations. Policies and procedures should address suspicious activity monitoring and FinCEN reporting and record-keeping requirements, which we'll discuss later.
A BSA AML compliance program must be periodically assessed to determine its effectiveness, which brings us to the independent testing component. As a director, it's critical that the board ensure that an independent party performs periodic testing. To meet that standard of independence, management can assign an employee who is not involved in day-to-day BSA duties, hire an outside party who does not already consult on the bank's BSA AML compliance program, or establish an arrangement with another bank. In addition, that independent party must be qualified. In other words, the person performing the independent testing needs to have sufficient BSA AML knowledge for the complexity of the bank's activities.
It knows the mechanism. There's a donate button if you guys are really concerned with donating. There's Patreon and there's a donate button down below. If you're on a phone, it doesn't work out as easy. There's an info button if you're on the app. There you go. Yeah, there's the Streamlabs donate. Thanks, guys. I really do appreciate that. Okay, so we're going to cover these files more in depth and how to crack these. I do have a video on how to crack these passwords or the Linux passwords with Hashcat. If you're interested in that, you're more than welcome to check out YouTube. It's one of the more recent videos that I have on there. And then we'll cover that and its importance more later down the road. But just knowing that the Etsy password contains the users and the Etsy shadow file contains the hashes is what's most important. So in terms of other users and permissions and things like that, a couple more important things we need to do. there is something called SU, which stands for switch user. So if we say we want to switch user to Bob, as root, we can just go ahead and do that. So now we're Bob. Now for Bob, and we want to cat out that Etsy shadow file, we do not have permission to do that because we are not a sudoer, sudoer. If we're not in the sudoers file, we do not have permission to do that. If we tried, we could try to sudo cat Etsy shadow, and then we type in Robert123, which is how I made the password. It says Bob is not in the sudoers file. This incident will be reported. So basically, sudoers is the permission for us, right? It's kind of like the permissions file. It allows us to have access or not to have access. Where does it get reported to? I don't know. That's a great question. I have no idea. So if anybody knows that, I know some of you guys know a lot more Linux than I do, so please go ahead and tell me where that is, because I'd love to know. But anyway, so we can't do any permissions with him. If we did, we'd use the command called sudo. So if you're a lower level user, you're not root, then you would need to run sudo in front of your command in order to execute it at a higher level. Did you get var logs? We can look this up. I'm down. We've got extra time tonight, so we can go. We're gonna say switch user with a dash. See if this works. Okay, and we're root. The dash just puts us back to root. You have to cat out the root file and var mail. What are you talking about? Var log. Can we CD? No. Yeah, maybe. What's the most recent, people? Hold on. What are we looking for? Where's our... We've got March 20th. Syslog, user log. 2046, that's not recent. 2055 is more recent. Yeah, syslog. All right. Let's try something. Let's try grep Bob. No, grep Bob. Grep sudo. No. I just catted it. It's not. If you cd to var mail and ls, you get a file that says root. Var log auth.log. All right. Thanks, Davey. Change user Bob information. Bob is not in sudoers. Oh. Bob's in trouble now, guys. Bob is in trouble now. You found it. Thanks, Davey. Davey's the best. All right. So that covers it for the users and privileges. So next we're going to go into some common network commands. So let's go ahead and talk about those. So the first network command that you should know, probably the most important command that you should know, ifconfig. Okay, ifconfig is similar to ipconfig if you are a Windows user. All this does is print out your information. So you can see my IPv4 address here. inet6 is your IPv6 address. You've got your netmask, your broadcast, etc. If you are lacking on information when it comes to what a netmask is or what a broadcast address is, you may need to study up a little bit on your networking skills. This course, unfortunately, does not cover networking. Oh yes, my IP is leaked, boys. We're out there now. So this is for your Ethernet, your plugins, etc. The wireless version of this is iwconfig, which I have no wireless adapter plugged in at the moment. If you're doing wireless hacking and you have a wireless adapter, then you come into IWconfig and you can see that. Okay,